Welcome to my channel. Today's topic is how to start keeping chickens. This is a beginner's guide to welfare, cost, and daily care. There is something deeply satisfying about the idea of collecting fresh eggs from your own backyard, watching hens scratch the earth, and building a small system that gives back every day. For many people, keeping chickens is not only about food. It is also about self-reliance, peace of mind, and reconnecting with a slower, more grounded way of living. But before anyone rushes into buying chicks or building a coop, it is important to understand what chicken keeping really involves. There are plenty of myths, unrealistic expectations, and romantic ideas surrounding backyard hens. Some people imagine chaos, bad smells, endless work, and noisy birds. Others assume chickens are effortless and will produce eggs forever. The truth sits somewhere in the middle. Keeping chickens can be rewarding, practical, and surprisingly joyful, but only when it is done responsibly. It requires proper planning, enough space, a safe and comfortable coop, attention to local rules, realistic budgeting, and most importantly, a genuine commitment to animal welfare. In this guide, I want to walk through the real foundations of getting started with chickens. Not the fantasy version, and not the fear-based version either, just the essentials. What to know, what to prepare for, what it costs, how to care for hens well, and how to create a setup that respects both the birds and the people keeping them. Understanding the common myths about chickens. One of the biggest misunderstandings about keeping chickens is the belief that they automatically create a dirty, smelly, chaotic yard. In reality, chickens are only messy when their environment is poorly managed. A well-designed coop, a dry litter system, good ventilation, and sensible feeding habits make a huge difference. Chickens do scratch, peck, dust bathe, and move bedding around, so of course they create some activity. But that is very different from living in filth. Another common myth is that a rooster is necessary if you want eggs. That is not true. Hens lay eggs whether or not a rooster is present. A rooster is only needed if someone wants fertilized eggs for hatching chicks. For ordinary household egg collection, hens on their own are enough. People also tend to exaggerate how noisy hens are. Chickens do make sounds, and some hens are certainly more dramatic than others, but they are not constantly loud. Most of the time, the sounds blend into the background of daily life. A hen may become noisier when laying an egg, reacting to stress, or sorting out the pecking order, but that is very different from non-stop disturbance. Another important misconception is that chickens lay eggs every single day, forever. Young hens in their most productive period may lay very regularly, especially in warmer seasons with longer daylight. But production changes with age, weather, stress, breed, and season. In winter, egg laying often slows down. As hens get older, they gradually produce fewer eggs and may eventually stop altogether. Anyone planning to keep chickens should understand this from the beginning and decide what kind of long-term relationship they want to have with older hens once their productive years slow down. There is also confusion around egg storage. Fresh eggs from a backyard flock can often be kept unrefrigerated for a period of time if they are unwashed, because the shell has a natural protective coating. Once washed, that protective barrier is reduced, and refrigeration becomes more important. This is one of those small details that surprises many first-time keepers. And finally, there is the famous reality many chicken owners joke about. People rarely stop with the exact number of hens they originally planned. Flocks often grow over time. Some people begin with 4 hens and soon start thinking about 6, then 8, then more. It happens partly because keeping chickens becomes enjoyable, and partly because egg production changes as hens age. Planning for future expansion is therefore wiser than planning only for the present moment. Checking the law before you begin. Before anyone purchases chickens, they need to answer a very basic question. Are chickens actually allowed where they live? This sounds obvious, but it is often overlooked. Local regulations can determine whether chickens are permitted at all, how many hens may be kept, whether roosters are banned, how far the coop must be from property lines, and what kind of structure is acceptable. Sometimes permits or approvals are needed. In other places, rules are stricter in urban neighborhoods than in rural areas. Ignoring these rules can create serious problems later. It would be heartbreaking to build a setup, bring home birds, and then discover that the arrangement violates local requirements. Responsible chicken keeping begins with respecting both the animals and the surrounding community. That means understanding the regulations before taking the first step. Why space matters more than people think. If there is one issue that deserves real attention, it is space. Chickens may be small animals, but they still need room to move, forage, dust bathe, rest, and escape one another when necessary. Crowding creates stress, increases aggression, and reduces overall welfare. Many people care deeply about the conditions in which food animals are kept. That is why so many consumers seek eggs from birds that were given greater freedom and more outdoor access. If someone chooses to raise hens at home, then that same concern should shape the design of the flock's living space. A responsible setup gives chickens enough room in their run to move naturally and express their normal behavior. More space does not only improve welfare, it also reduces fights, boredom, and frustration. Chickens are active, curious birds. They enjoy exploring, scratching for insects, and investigating whatever is happening around them. A cramped environment denies them these basic behaviors. The more room they have, the more balanced and relaxed the flock tends to be. Space is not a luxury, it is part of proper care. Designing a coop that works for chickens. The coop is the heart of the setup. It is where chickens roost at night, lay eggs, shelter from weather, and retreat for safety. A good coop does not need to be extravagant, but it does need to be thoughtfully designed. A coop should provide adequate roosting space so hens can perch comfortably. It should have nesting areas that feel safe and sheltered. It should also offer ventilation, because stale, damp air can quickly create health problems. Good airflow matters in both hot and cold climates. What changes is how that airflow is managed. In warm climates, ventilation helps prevent overheating. In colder climates, insulation and draft control become more important, but the co-op still needs fresh air. A sealed coop may seem protective, but without proper airflow, it can trap moisture and create an unhealthy environment. Anyone planning a coop should also think beyond the immediate present. Flocks often grow. If the coop can safely accommodate future expansion, that saves trouble later. It is far easier to plan ahead than to rebuild in frustration after realizing the flock has outgrown the original design. The coop does not have to be luxurious. What matters is whether it supports animal welfare. A simple, well-built coop designed with care can serve hens far better than a cheap, mass-produced model with poor ventilation, inadequate space, and weak protection. Buying, building, and budgeting. Realistically, when people begin researching chicken keeping, they quickly discover that costs vary wildly. A person can build a simple, functional setup on a tight budget, or they can spend an extraordinary amount creating something elaborate. There is no single correct price point. What matters is whether the setup is safe, durable, humane, and manageable. A basic do-it-yourself co-op may be built relatively affordably, especially if someone already has tools, materials, and practical building skills. But even lower-cost setups still require planning. Feeders, water systems, roosts, bedding, fencing, and predator protection all add up. On the other end of the spectrum, there are premium co-ops that cost as much as major household purchases. These may be beautifully built and highly functional, but they are not necessary for everyone. Chicken keeping does not need to become a luxury project. It simply needs to be done well. The key is to budget honestly. Cheap can become expensive if poor design leads to stress, illness, or repeated repairs. At the same time, expensive does not automatically mean better unless the extra money truly improves welfare, durability, and usability. Choosing how to start your flock. One of the most personal decisions in chicken keeping is how to bring birds into the flock. Some people are drawn to the idea of hatching from eggs. Others prefer to buy ready-to-lay hens. Many find that starting with chicks offers the most meaningful balance between experience and practicality. Hatching from eggs can be fascinating, but it also brings uncertainty, especially around sex. Not everyone can keep roosters, and not everyone wants to raise them. Buying mature hens removes much of the early work, but it also skips the bonding and learning that come from raising birds from a young age. For many beginners, chicks offer the most rewarding route. They allow a keeper to raise hens from the beginning, observe their personalities develop, and feel more connected to the flock. But chicks also require a brooding setup, warmth, careful feeding, clean bedding, and extra attention during those early weeks. This stage is delicate. Young chicks need the right temperature and the right environment. They depend on human care in the absence of a mother hen. Raising them well takes preparation, but it can also be one of the most satisfying parts of the entire experience. Choosing breeds. With intention. Breed selection is one of the more enjoyable parts of starting a flock. Some people choose breeds based on personality. Others care about climate suitability, egg production, egg color, appearance, or temperament. There is no universal best breed because different priorities lead to different decisions. Some breeds are known for being gentle and friendly. Others are more independent or assertive. Some handle cold weather especially well, while others do better in warmer conditions. Some are valued for beauty and distinctive plumage, while others are chosen for dependable laying or dual-purpose usefulness. The important thing is not to chase rarity for the sake of novelty. A beginner-friendly breed that suits the climate, fits the keeper's goals, and has a manageable temperament is often far more valuable than a breed chosen only because it looks unusual. A good flock begins with thoughtful choices, not impulsive ones. The rhythm of daily, weekly, and seasonal care. One of the best things about chickens is that their daily care is usually manageable. They are not as demanding as many people imagine, especially once the system is set up properly. On a daily basis, the essentials are straightforward. Check the birds, collect eggs, make sure water is available, and make sure feed is accessible. Many people also enjoy spending a little time simply observing the flock, watching behavior, noticing mood, and making sure everything looks normal. Weekly care often involves checking bedding, topping up supplies, and doing a light tidy. Monthly care may involve a more thorough clean, leveling out bedding, checking the run, inspecting the flock more carefully, and making sure nothing in the setup is deteriorating. At longer intervals, deeper cleaning becomes necessary. Litter may need to be fully replaced. Older material may be moved to compost, and parts of the coop may need maintenance. Even so, the work is usually less overwhelming than people expect when the system has been planned well from the start. Chicken keeping is not effortless, but it is very manageable when routine replaces chaos. Health, problems, and paying attention. Early. Although chickens are hardy animals in many respects, they are still vulnerable to health issues. Good care reduces risk, but it does not remove it entirely. A responsible keeper learns to notice early warning signs. Changes in posture, appetite, droppings, movement, feather condition, or social behavior can signal that something is wrong. External parasites, foot problems, and stress-related issues can occur. The goal is not to become fearful, but to become observant. Some issues are minor and manageable, others require prompt action. A flock owner does not need to panic at every unusual behavior, but they do need to pay attention. Prevention remains the best strategy. Clean housing, low stress, good nutrition, dry conditions, and enough space go a long way. There are also non-medical behavioral phases, such as broodiness, when a hen becomes determined to sit on eggs and hatch them, whether or not fertilized eggs are present. This is not a disease, but it does affect flock dynamics and the hen's routine. Understanding these behaviors helps keepers respond calmly, rather than treating every unusual moment as a crisis. The real cost of keeping chickens. Eventually, every conversation about backyard hens arrives at the same question: how much does it actually cost? The answer depends entirely on the choices being made. Housing can range from modest to extravagant. Feed costs vary depending on flock size, feed quality, and how much supplemental forage or garden material is available. The birds themselves may be inexpensive or surprisingly costly, depending on breed and age. Then there are all the supporting expenses: bedding, fencing, water systems, feeders, brooding supplies for chicks, maintenance, and potential health-related needs. If someone is asking whether backyard hens are the cheapest possible way to obtain eggs, the answer is usually more complicated than expected. Once all costs are included, the eggs are rarely cheap in the narrow financial sense, especially at the beginning. But that does not mean chicken keeping lacks value. In fact, its value often lies elsewhere. It lies in egg quality, confidence in how the birds were raised, the pleasure of caring for them, the rhythm they bring to everyday life, the compost they help create, and the sense of connection to food and land that so many people now miss. In other words, keeping chickens is not only an economic decision, it is also a quality of life decision. Why people keep chickens, even when it is not the cheapest option. If the goal was simply to minimize cost per egg at all times, many people would never bother keeping chickens. But that is not the whole story. People keep chickens because the eggs are fresher, because the flock becomes part of daily life, because children learn where food comes from, because the birds are unexpectedly entertaining, because the sound of hens moving through a yard can make a home feel alive, because caring for animals can bring calm, rhythm, and purpose. There is also an ethical dimension. For many keepers, raising hens at home means having more control over welfare. It means knowing the birds have clean space, attention, and dignity. It means refusing to reduce the animal to a product alone. That is why responsible chicken keeping matters. If chickens are brought into a home, then they deserve more than convenience. They deserve a thoughtful setup, good care, enough room, proper nutrition, and a keeper who understands that producing eggs is only one part of who they are. Closing thoughts. Getting started with chickens can be one of the most rewarding steps a person takes toward a more self-reliant lifestyle. But it should begin with realism, not fantasy. Chickens are not lawn ornaments, and they are not tiny egg machines. They are living animals with needs, instincts, personalities, and rhythms of their own. A good start requires learning. It requires checking the rules, planning space, designing a safe coop, budgeting honestly, choosing birds carefully, and committing to daily responsibility. When those pieces are in place, chicken keeping can become practical, peaceful, and deeply satisfying. For people who approach it with care, backyard hens offer much more than eggs. They offer a different relationship with food, with land, and with time itself. They remind us that not every worthwhile investment is measured only in money. Some are measured in quality, trust, connection, and the quiet confidence of knowing you built something good with your own hands. If that is the kind of life you want to move toward, then keeping chickens may be a beautiful place to begin. Now, if you enjoyed this story and would like more original content on practical wealth, sustainable living, and thoughtful investment ideas, make sure to like this video, subscribe to Luxe Latitude, and share it with someone who's been thinking about starting their own journey with backyard chickens. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next story.